Hey guys, thanks for tuning in and welcome back to my 350 subscribers, which is definitely an unexpected surprise. I really appreciate all the support the channel's been getting. So as some of you recall, back in my Mows in the Gut video, I blatantly teased this inglorious bastard and said I'd talk about it at a later time. So here we are. The overwhelming demand from all three of you to see a video on this has not gone unheard, so let's get right into it. This was a German K98k from World War II, and it's been through a few tasteful upgrades. Now, before the inevitable angry mob that didn't even get this far in the video shows up in the comment section to rip me a new shit cutter for destroying a war relic, I want to make it very clear that I did not alter or destroy an original K98. I'll gladly tell that whole story, but first, let's head back to the range and take a few more shots. Holy shit, I know, more than one shooting clip in one of my videos. What is this? Some sort of gun channel or something? Yeah, I guess it is. So when I found this thing, nothing on it was original. It was being sold as a parts gun at my local gun store, and it had been irreversibly sporterized and not even functional. Now for the uninitiated, sporterizing is when somebody takes a classic military rifle like this one and turns it into, well, something kind of like what you've already seen. Now, this was incredibly common in the past when people were bringing home captured enemy rifles by the millions, and also tons of imports coming into the country that cost next to nothing. So back then, hunting rifles cost a lot more than what you would get for a normal surplus rifle. And I'm sure if you're like anybody else on the internet, I'm sure your grandpa has one of these stowed away in his closet. And if he doesn't, look harder, because there's probably one in there. This particular example was quite a rarity because it was found in somebody's grandpa's basement, so that makes me better than you. Feel free to leave your stories on where you found a Japanese Arisaka. So nowadays, sporterizing military rifles, there goes my sump pump. I filmed these in my basement, by the way, so I'm just gonna let that pass. There it goes. Anyway, so sporterizing military rifles in modern times is looked down upon for the most part. That's because economy hunting rifles, like say a Ruger American, are starting to cost less than the military surplus rifles on the market nowadays. So there's really no practical reason to do it anymore. As for this particular example, when I found it, the original stock and all the hardware were gone. The original barrel, the sights, the bayonet lug were also gone. And the only salvageable part, the receiver, which unfortunately matches all the way down to the screws, was drilled and tapped, which means somebody just put a bunch of holes in it to try to mount a scope on it. But don't worry, I took full advantage of that by throwing on this Aimpoint 9000L you see here. Because I'm a sadistic shithead and I really want to torture my inner gun nerd, but at the same time I like to appeal to my inner Call of Duty kid. Now you'll be lying if you take one look at this thing and tell me you don't want to 1v1 me on Rust, quickscope, no-scope, hardcore for your clan's honor. You can take that statement as seriously as you want to. Anyway, to summarize, it would cost way more than the gun would ever be worth to try restoring it, and plus I had none of the original parts anyway. So we're good? We're still friends? Awesome. So now that I've gone and talked about how this thing was a steaming pile of garbage, why would I even want to touch something like that with a 10-foot pole to begin with? Well, I'm glad you asked. So a few years ago, when I was no more than just a broke college student, I was obsessed with World War II firearms. Specifically, anything that was rare, obscure, prototypes, experimental, you get the picture. Pretty much to the point where it was an integral part of my personality, and I am very sorry to my friends watching this. That was kind of hard to deal with. But hey, look at the bright side. Look how much my obsession has diversified. I'm still working on the personality part though. So as some of you fellow gun nerds might understand, it didn't take me long to find out that the DeFile Carbine existed. Oh yeah, that's where this is going. So for those of you who don't know what a DeFile Carbine is, which understandably, maybe a lot of you, it was a specialist weapon issued to British commandos during World War II, and it was based on a heavily modified Lee Enfield rifle action, but that's where the similarities taper off. So they were chambered in .45 ACP, they fed from modified 1911 magazines, and oh yeah, the entire barrel assembly was made of a giant silencer that put a goddamn Pringles can to shame. Now, unsurprisingly, the DeFile carbine was highly regarded for being able to poke holes in enemy soldiers from a safe distance without being noticed. And it was considered by many to be one of, if not the most silent military firearm ever issued. So when I found out that gun existed, it was doing shamefully awesome things to my weird little penis, and I knew that I had to have one in my collection. But clearly my options were quite limited, seeing as only a couple hundred originals were ever made, and God knows if I'll ever lay eyes on a real one in my lifetime. So the other options were to hire a specialty gunsmith to manufacture a replica for me, which would cost more than double what I made in a month. And the only other option would be to make a faithful replica myself, but that would require money I didn't have, materials I didn't have, tools I didn't have, and knowledge I didn't have. And plus, I didn't want to sporterize my only Enfield. It's the crustiest, ugly rifle that I own, but I love it so much I couldn't do it. Yes, I know, it's very ironic. So the desire to have a DeFile kind of sat on the back burner for a while until one fateful night while I was blindly stumbling around the internet. Surprisingly, while not putting any mileage on my incognito browser, I found a company called Rhineland Arms. So the folks down at Rhineland Arms specialize in making conversion kits for Mauser pattern rifles, which is arguably the most common rifle action you're ever going to find on the surplus market. That's because the Mauser rifle and its variants or derivatives were pretty much in use with every major power in the world, including the US. The 1903 Springfield didn't come from nowhere, folks. Sorry, I was getting kind of off track there. So I was looking at their catalog and I saw that they made a conversion kit for Mausers that rechambered them in 45 ACP, allowed them to take 1911 magazines, and had a factory threaded barrel for a silencer. So you can imagine my delight when I immediately shit my pants, in a good way, and ordered that kit instantly. So really the only step after that was to waddle my fat ass down to the local gun shop and find an unwilling victim Mauser rifle to DeFile. Oh, I should have called it the DeFile carbine. That would have been so cool. What am I doing? Whatever. But thankfully for me, I did not need to destroy an original military-issued Mauser because I found this previously mentioned mutilated relic of the Third Reich, and I brought that home for a steal and waited for the conversion kit to arrive in the mail. So when that kit arrived in the mail, I gave this German piece of craftsmanship an all-American makeover by converting it to 45 ACP, the Lord's caliber, and adding this adapter which lets it be in a perpetual state of deep-throating 1911 magazines. No, when I say deep throat, I really mean it. Watch. So with a few days of my spare time, paired with a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and inventing some colorful, fun new swear words, I had the rifle as you see it right here. Now obviously I was only one step shy of having the sick, slick, silent shitter of my dreams, and that was the old whisper pickle here. But don't worry, with the passage of time paired with a little bit of financial carelessness and the 10-month wait for the paperwork to clear, I had a Rugged Suppressors Obsidian 45. Now you can imagine my excitement when I got the phone call to come pick up this suppressor, so I immediately ran to the range to pick it up, Franken Mauser in hand. This is going to take a while. There we go. So I went to my local gravel pit, threw the suppressor on, and sent that first round downrange, and whew, it was good. In fact, I actually have some old footage from that first range trip. I'll go ahead and roll that right now. Guys, I swear to God, I can make louder sounds with my thighs than this thing is capable of. Oh, So it was during that first range trip when I immediately knew that this was the quietest center fire firearm I had in my entire collection. So you're probably wondering what makes this and the DeFile that inspired it so quiet to begin with. Well, once again, I'm glad you asked. Well, the answer is pretty simple and straightforward. When you fire a gun, you get 3 sounds normally, 2 of which are louder than shit. The first sound is what we call the report of the firearm, and that's when the powder ignites, causing that familiar bang we all know about, which sends the bullet screaming downrange. The second sound is that bullet screaming downrange. Most rifles and many pistols tend to fire projectiles that exceed the speed of sound, and when they break the sound barrier, it creates a loud cracking sound that surrounds your area. Now the third sound isn't quite as bad, but it's still noticeable, but seeing as most modern suppressor hosts are semi-automatic rifles and pistols, you tend to hear the action reciprocating back and forth every time you fire the gun. Now while it's not the most loud sound of the 3, it's definitely still noticeable. Every time you fire a semi-automatic rifle or pistol, you're going to hear this big hunk of steel slamming back and forth to reciprocate and chamber another round. And in some cases, the action can open a little too soon and let a lot of extra gas and noise out of the ejection port. So I'm going to roll some footage of this pistol shooting the exact same ammo with the exact same suppressor that the Mauser was using in the earlier clips, just so you can get a bit of a comparison. So what's really cool about this setup is that it effectively eliminates all three sounds. First off, the suppressor effectively muffles the report of the firearm, reducing it to what sounds like a puff of air. The second sound never occurs to begin with because 45 ACP in its standard loading is naturally subsonic. It only travels about 850 to 950 feet per second, even out of a 16-inch barrel. And the third sound, the action reciprocating, doesn't really happen because this is a bolt-action rifle, which means that I manually open the action after I've already fired the round. And until I choose to open the action and chamber a new cartridge, the action makes zero sound whatsoever and actually creates a really good seal and doesn't let any gas escape either. So is it the best looking, most practical, well-made gun in my collection? God no. What the hell is wrong with you? But this is something I'm really proud of. It was my first seriously involved gunsmithing project, if that's what you want to call it. I mean, I've built ARs in the past and, everybody else was doing that. So I just wanted to do something a little bit out of the box. And this was really my attempt at breathing life into something that was going to be sold for parts anyway. So I'm proud of it. And plus, it's a great shooter and it always turns heads at the range. Everybody always wants to take a shot with this thing because when they hear it go off, they too can't believe how quiet it is. And that really covers it. There's really not much more to talk about with this particular gun. It's just something personal to me that I thought you guys would enjoy. So if you've got a military rifle in your collection that was sporterized to shit at some point, but you still love it anyway, I'd love to hear about it in the comments section. And speaking of you guys, thank you so much for all the support the channel's been getting. This has been a ride, and I've been so happy with all the feedback, support, and kind words you've all been giving me. I've set some personal stretch goals for the channel, and what can I say? They've been far exceeded by this point in the year, and I'm really grateful for that. So once again, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the next one, and take care.